picture this. You are 25 years old, and you're sitting on a hard, completely unforgiving bench at King's Cross Station in London.
Right, and it's 1990.
Exactly. 1990, the air smells like, diesel fumes, cold coffee, and that specific metallic tang of a train station in the dead of winter.
It's not a comfortable place to be.
No, not at all. And you are completely trapped. Your train to Manchester is delayed, and we're not talking about a few minutes, but for 4 agonizing hours.
Oh, wow. 4 hours.
Yeah. And you've been surviving on temp jobs. You are practically penniless, and you are just desperate to escape the grinding, harsh reality of your day-to-day life in the city.
Which is incredibly relatable. I mean, that feeling of being stuck.
Right. So you are just staring at the tracks. You have no pen to write with. You have no book to read. And crucially, because it's 1990...
No smartphone.
Exactly. You have no smartphone in your pocket to rescue you from the moment.
Yeah.
You are just marooned in this ocean of absolute inescapable boredom.
Which is, honestly, a state of being we have almost entirely engineered out of modern existence.
We really have.
Yeah, I mean, when you are forced into that kind of cognitive corner with nowhere to go, nothing to consume, and absolutely no way to artificially fast forward the clock, the human brain kind of starts to panic.
It needs something to do.
Right. It searches for stimulation. And when it can't find any in the physical environment, it essentially has to build a new environment from scratch.
So, to escape that gray, freezing reality, this 25-year-old woman starts daydreaming. She imagines a train.
But not the one she's waiting for.
No, not the delayed, frustrating, diesel-chugging train. She imagines a magical train. One that runs on time, taking children to a sanctuary, a magical school.
And this wasn't just a fleeting thought, was it?
No, over the course of that 4-hour delay, and the ride to Manchester that followed, she doesn't just invent a premise. She memorizes the intricate details of 3 specific characters.
She's building a whole world in her head.
Exactly. She builds the skeletal structure of an entire hidden society, entirely because she has literally nothing else to do.
That's wild.
And that single moment of sheer, unadulterated boredom, that forced cognitive pause, eventually transforms into a $35 billion franchise.
I mean, the environmental friction is really the catalyst here.
How so?
Well, if she had possessed a device to scroll through, or like a Walkman to distract her, or even just a pen to immediately start drafting and prematurely judging her own ideas, the most significant literary phenomenon of the modern era might never have materialized.
It's crazy to think about.
It really is. The discomfort of her reality basically forced her imagination into a state of hyperproductivity.
Which is something you really have to think about the next time you're, stuck in a waiting room and instinctively reach for your phone.
Yeah, we might be systematically extinguishing the exact kind of agonizing boredom that historically births world-changing creativity.
Spot on. So today, you and I are going to take a journey into the world born on that delayed train. But we aren't just going to rehash the famous books or the movies you already know.
Right. Everyone knows the basics.
Yeah, you know The Boy Who Lived, you know the wands and the spells. Today, for this deep dive, we are going to look at the hidden architecture of this universe, pulling from official lore and the author's expansive supplementary writings.
Which are so rich with detail.
Oh, absolutely. We are going to decode the literal and psychological blueprint of Hogwarts.
Basically, we are examining the mortar between the bricks.
I like that.
Yeah, when you study the foundational lore, the history that predates the main narrative by like 1,000 years, you realize this school is not just a whimsical backdrop.
Right, it's not just a cool setting.
No, it is a highly complex, deliberately engineered psychological landscape. Every moving staircase, every animal on a banner, every stone carved into the Scottish Highlands, it all tells a deeply human story of survival and conflicting ideologies.
And some profound, enduring flaws.
Exactly.
By the time we finish this deep dive, you're going to have answers that completely reframe how you see this universe. You're going to find out why a house called Ravenclaw would have an eagle as a mascot.
Which always sounds like a mistake to people.
It does. But it is actually deeply intentional. You'll also learn how a sanctuary built entirely for child safety became, frankly, the most dangerous architectural disaster in history.
It's a complete paradox.
It really is. But before we get to the 10th century and the literal construction of the castle, we have to talk about the real-world construction of the story. Because the reality of the author's life was just as chaotic and just as rooted in survival as the world she was building.
Yeah, the conception of this universe is really a masterclass in pushing through insurmountable friction.
It really is.
The author spent 5 grueling years drafting the overarching narrative, from 1990 to 1995. And we kind of have to banish this romanticized image of a writer sitting calmly in a sunlit study.
Oh yeah, it wasn't like that at all.
Not even close. She was meticulously plotting a massive, interlocking 7-book mystery while navigating profound back-to-back personal tragedies.
The timeline of those 5 years is just relentless. I mean, shortly after that train ride, she lost her mother to multiple sclerosis.
That's a massive blow.
Massive. And that loss fundamentally rewired the DNA of the story she was writing. It embedded this profound, inescapable theme of grief into the very foundation of the books.
You can feel it in every chapter, really.
Yeah. And after that, she moved to Portugal, she got married, had a baby, and then subsequently went through a harrowing divorce.
Just wave after wave of life changes.
Exactly. She ended up back in the UK as a single mother living on state benefits. She famously pushed a stroller into Edinburgh cafes, buying a single cup of espresso just to have a warm place to write while her daughter slept.
Which shows she was channeling that real-world chaos directly into the text. The narrative resonates on a global scale because it wasn't, manufactured from a place of comfort or some corporate strategy.
It was raw.
It was forged in a crucible of real human suffering. The recurring motifs of the story fighting against an overwhelming, suffocating darkness, the desperate search for a found family, these weren't just clever plot devices.
Right, they were immediate reflections of her lived experience.
Exactly. The magic system itself functionally served as a psychological coping mechanism. It was a way to exert control over a world that felt entirely out of her hands.
Which honestly makes what happened next so infuriating.
Oh, the rejections.
Yes. She finally finishes the manuscript in 1995. She binds up 5 years of grief, poverty, and raw imagination, sends it out to the world, and gets utterly stonewalled.
It's hard to believe in hindsight.
12 different publishers rejected the finished manuscript. 12. You have the blueprint for a cultural empire sitting on your desk, and you just pass on it.
It is the ultimate case study in the failure of institutional gatekeeping.
How so?
Well, you have these boardrooms full of highly educated, experienced adults. Their sole professional mandate is to identify engaging literature, and they completely missed the frequency of this story.
They just didn't get it.
Right. They were almost certainly evaluating the manuscript through the wrong metrics. They were probably comparing it to the prevailing market trends of the mid-90s, scrutinizing the word count, deciding it was, too long or too dark for children.
They were overthinking it.
Exactly. They applied conventional industry logic to something entirely unprecedented.
So publisher number 13 was a relatively small house called Bloomsbury. And the incredible thing is, they were also gearing up to pass on it.
Really? I didn't realize they were going to reject it, too.
Yeah. The manuscript was languishing in their slush pile, but the chairman of Bloomsbury had an 8-year-old daughter.
Oh, right.
He brought the first chapter home, gave it to her, and she just devoured it. She came back, demanded the rest of the book, and utterly refused to let it go.
Which is brilliant because the adults in the room were basically paralyzed by their own expertise.
They couldn't see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. But the actual target demographic, a child, bypassed all those analytical corporate filters.
Yeah, 8-year-old doesn't care about market trends.
Or formatting. She connected directly with the raw, beating heart of the narrative. It required a completely unjaded mind to recognize the profound value of the manuscript.
It really makes you wonder, if that 8-year-old girl hadn't thrown a fit and demanded the next chapter, does this story just vanish into a drawer forever?
It's highly likely. It really hung by a thread.
The survival of this entire universe, before it even reached a printing press, hinged on an incredibly fragile moment of serendipity.
It's terrifying to think about.
It is. And it's funny, we talk about the author writing this to escape the harshness of 1990s London, but the characters she was writing about, the founders of this school,
they were trying to escape something far more immediate.
And lethal. To understand why Hogwarts looks and functions the way it does, we have to completely shift our mindset and travel back to the in-universe origin of the school.
Right. We are looking at the 10th century here.
Yep, the 10th century.
And it is crucial to strip away any modern assumptions about, peaceful academic pursuit. The source material places the founding of Hogwarts in an undisclosed, rugged location in the Scottish Highlands during a brutally dark, chaotic period of history.
It was not a fun time.
No. In the Middle Ages, the magical community was facing a literal existential crisis.
Muggles, non-magical people, vastly outnumbered the magical population, and the Muggles were terrified of what they couldn't understand.
Magic wasn't just seen as a quirk.
No, it was viewed as explicit devil worship. The historical context here isn't just mild prejudice or, social exclusion. We are talking about horrific, systemic violence.
Witch hunts, burnings at the stake.
Stonings. The magical community was actively being hunted to extinction.
And this is the bloody backdrop against which the Hogwarts Four emerged.
Right. Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin.
Contemporary pop culture often reduces them to historical teachers or, eccentric headmasters, but in the reality of the 10th century, they were radical visionaries.
It had to be.
Exactly. They were the leaders of a persecuted, shrinking minority who recognized that if they did not take drastic, unified action, an entire generation of wizarding children would simply not survive to adulthood.
So they needed a sanctuary. Hogwarts was never intended to be just a boarding school. It was conceived as a fortress.
The literal stronghold.
But this is the irony that makes the lore so compelling. They build this massive, sprawling castle entirely based on the mandate of child safety. Yet if you look at the actual interior of the school,
it's terrifying.
They filled it with the most insane hazards imaginable.
The contradiction is glaring, especially if you apply a 21st century definition of child endangerment.
I mean, you have massive falling hazards, staircases that literally swing out into open air over terrifying drops.
Right.
You have extreme fire safety hazards with open torches everywhere. Deadly wild animals in the forest 50 feet from the front door.
Not to mention the physical ghosts roaming the corridor.
Exactly. Imagine building a state-of-the-art, impenetrable bomb shelter to protect your kids, but then deciding to, scatter active landmines in the hallway just to keep them on their toes. It completely defies logic.
Well, it defies modern logic.
Fair point.
You have to consider how the definition of safety fundamentally shifts, depending on the historical trauma of the architects. To a magical person in the 10th century, safety had a singular, desperate meaning.
Which was?
Hidden from the mob with pitchforks. OSHA compliance, handrails, predictable architecture, those were not even on the spectrum of their concerns.
So a moving staircase isn't a hazard, it's a training tool.
Precisely. It's the opposite of a hazard in their minds. The founders operated from a deeply ingrained survivalist mindset.
They were preparing them for war, essentially.
Yeah, they were acutely aware that these children were going to graduate into a world that actively wanted to eradicate them. So the school itself was designed to harden the students.
To keep them alert.
Exactly. To force them into a state of absolute self-reliance. Navigating a staircase that might randomly deposit you on the wrong floor isn't some whimsical quirk. It is a daily, relentless exercise in situational awareness.
Wow, that makes so much sense.
The internal dangers of the castle were pedagogical tools. They were meant to inoculate the children against the far more lethal, unpredictable dangers waiting outside the castle walls.
They were essentially putting these kids through magical boot camp. But that brings up a huge logistical question.
How to hide it.
Yeah. If absolute secrecy and survival were the primary directives, how did they hide a massive, sprawling Scottish fortress from the Muggles? I mean, you can't exactly throw a giant tarp over a castle.
No, you can't.
And how did they even select the location in the first place?
Well, the defensive magic of Hogwarts is a really fascinating study in psychological manipulation.
How did it work?
The founders didn't just render the castle invisible, because, think about it, that might have aroused suspicion if a Muggle just walked into a solid, unseen wall in the middle of a field.
Right, that would cause a panic.
And instead, they weaponized the way the human brain processes and filters environments. They layered the physical location with a complex network of Muggle-repelling charms.
According to the lore, if a non-magical person wanders near the Hogwarts grounds, they do not see a majestic castle with glowing windows.
No, not at all.
They see a terrifying, structurally unsound heap of ruined rubble, plastered with warnings to stay away. It is just the ultimate form of magical camouflage.
And it is brilliant because it relies entirely on human nature. We have an evolutionary instinct to avert our eyes from decay and obvious danger.
We just tune it out.
Yeah. If you see an abandoned, rotting structure that looks like it might collapse on you, your immediate cognitive response is avoidance. You don't investigate. You physically turn your body and walk in the opposite direction.
Think about the building you work in or the city street you walk down every day. If there's an old boarded-up factory with shattered windows, Your brain literally just edits it out of your reality.
We don't even register its presence after a while.
It's a psychological blind spot.
Yeah.
And the founders tapped into that exact phenomenon. They didn't need to physically barricade the Muggles.
Right, they just needed to manipulate their perception of the landscape so their own brains would tell them to leave.
Which brings us to the methodology behind choosing that specific landscape.
This part is wild.
It is. Given that this was a monumental architectural undertaking meant to house the future of their entire civilization, you would assume they conducted like a rigorous geographical survey.
Analyzing defensive sightlines, resource proximity.
Exactly. Instead, the location was dictated entirely by a dream.
It's so counterintuitive to how we think today.
This detail from the expanded lore is so strange. Rowena Ravenclaw, who is universally recognized as the most intellectual, logical, and analytical of four founders, has a dream.
The smart one relies on a dream.
Yeah. And in this dream, she is being led by a warty hog.
A pig.
A bumpy, ugly pig guides her to a high cliff situated beside a great lake. She wakes up, gathers the other three legendary wizards, and essentially says, "I saw a pig on a cliff in my sleep. That is where we are building the fortress, and we're going to name it after the pig."
I mean, if a modern urban planner proposed a multi-million-dollar development based on a nocturnal vision of a farm animal,
they'd be fired instantly.
Instantly dismissed. It sounds absurd to our sensibilities, but we have to view this through the epistemological framework of the 10th century.
It's a different world.
In the magical community of that era, a visionary's dream was not dismissed as the random firing of synapses or, the digestion of a bad meal. It carried immense strategic weight.
A dream wasn't a subconscious glitch. It was a map.
It was viewed as magic itself, speaking directly to the receiver. The magical community deeply revered omens, prophecy, and divination.
So for someone as intellectually rigorous as Ravenclaw to have such a vivid, specific vision,
it was interpreted as an undeniable directive. It really reveals the deeply mystical foundation of their society. It demonstrates that raw intellect and spiritual intuition were not viewed as opposing forces.
They were complementary, necessary tools for survival. So the warty hog gives them the location. The Muggle-repelling charms give them their camouflage. The physical foundation is set. Now they need an emblem.
A crest.
A crest to represent their unified front to the terrified magical families they were trying to recruit. But the design they settled on for that crest secretly hinted at a massive structural fracture from the very beginning. Let's look at the actual artwork of the Hogwarts crest.
The crest is incredibly rich with heraldic symbolism.
Break it down for us.
On the surface layer, you have the four quadrants representing the four founders. You have Gryffindor's griffin, Hufflepuff's badger, Ravenclaw's eagle, and Slytherin's snake.
And wrapping around those four animals is the famous Latin motto, Jarco dormiens nunquam titilandus.
Yes.
Which literally translates to never tickle a sleeping dragon, which is a fantastic phrase, but honestly, it sounds a bit random for an academic institution.
It does seem whimsical at first glance.
But the author's own supplemental writing explains that this is essentially the magical equivalent of the idiom, let sleeping dogs lie.
Right. It is a stark warning disguised as a whimsical motto. It translates conceptually to do not play with fire.
Which goes back to the survival stuff.
Exactly. It serves to constantly reinforce that survivalist mindset we discussed. It reminds the students that even though they are inside a sanctuary, magic is inherently dangerous, volatile, and unpredictable. You do not provoke forces that are beyond your control.
But the real secret of the crest isn't the motto, and it isn't the choice of animals. The secret is embedded in the physical layout of the shield itself.
The heraldry.
Yeah, the lore dives into the highly specific rules of heraldry. There is a concept called an escutcheon of tree tents. Walk me through how we are actually supposed to look at this crest.
Well, heraldry is a highly codified visual language. It is not merely decorative. The layout, the colors, and the positioning on a shield communicate hierarchy, history, and core values.
It's like a visual code.
Exactly. And the fundamental key to reading a heraldic shield is understanding perspective. You do not read the shield as you look at it from the outside facing it. You read it from the perspective of the warrior who is holding the shield from behind.
Okay, so let me visualize this. If I am holding the shield against my chest, my left hand, the shield's left side, is called the sinister side in heraldry.
Correct.
And historically, the sinister side symbolizes evil, darkness, or illegitimacy.
Yes, it does.
Well, my right arm, the shield's right side, is the dexter side, which historically symbolizes nobility, heroism, and honor.
That is the correct heraldic framework. Now apply that framework to the Hogwarts crest. From the perspective of the shield bearer, look at where the houses are placed.
Okay.
Salazar Slytherin's snake is placed firmly in the bottom quadrant of the sinister side. Godric Gryffindor's griffin is placed firmly on the dexter side.
Wait, hold on. If I'm holding it, my left is the evil side.
Oh,
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
If Slytherin is placed on the literal defined evil side of the crest from day one, did the other founders set Salazar up? I mean, they were supposed to be best friends building a school together. Were they psychologically branding Slytherin and his students as the bad guys before they even opened the doors?
It is a profound historical question within the lore.
That's crazy.
We know from the texts that Salazar Slytherin eventually abandoned the school after a bitter ideological falling out over admitting Muggle-born students. But this crest was designed at the inception of the school during their supposed golden age of unity.
So they knew.
The heraldic placement strongly suggests that the ideological fracture, the mutual suspicion, was present, at least subconsciously, from the very beginning.
It's like they baked their own prejudices right into the logo of the school. Think about the psychological implications of this for a moment.
It's massive.
Imagine you are an 11-year-old kid. You leave your family, you get sorted into Slytherin, and you look up at the school crest in the Great Hall. And the visual language of the heraldry itself is quietly signaling to you that your house represents the dark, sinister side of the community.
Right.
How could that not create a self-fulfilling prophecy?
The sociological implications are staggering. Expectation shapes behavior, especially in developing minds.
Absolutely.
If an institution continually, even subtly, signals to a group of children that they are inherently aligned with darkness, cunning, and betrayal, it becomes highly probable that those children will internalize those traits as their core identity.
They become what you tell them they are.
You inadvertently breed the exact darkness you fear simply by structuring the environment to expect it. The founders, through their own biases, may have seeded the very division that nearly destroyed their sanctuary centuries later.
That reframes the entire history of the school. And this inherent division wasn't just painted on a piece of parchment. It wasn't just a theoretical concept.
No, it was physical.
They literally carved their differing personalities, their paranoia, and their ideologies into the physical stone of the castle itself. Let's dig into the architectural psychology of Hogwarts, because each founder built their own specific domains.
The construction of Hogwarts was nominally a collaborative effort, but in practice, it was heavily compartmentalized.
Everyone took a piece.
Yes. Each founder contributed specific, massive elements to the physical blueprint of the castle, and those architectural elements serve as direct, physical manifestations of their psychological profiles.
Let's start with Rowena Ravenclaw. She was the primary architect of the interior.
She designed the sprawling, confusing layout of the corridors.
And she is the one responsible for those infamous 142 moving staircases. And she didn't just enchant them to float around on a whim. The extended lore notes that she utilized incredibly complex magic, something referred to as runic probability matrix, to design their pathways.
Which is fascinating.
How does a probability matrix even work in a stone staircase?
Well, a runic probability matrix implies a highly analytical, deeply mathematical approach to spellcraft. It suggests that the staircases don't just move randomly, they operate on an algorithmic level.
Like a program.
Exactly. They might calculate the weight of the students, the time of day, the destination they are trying to reach, and intentionally introduce calculated friction into their journey.
Why would she do that?
Because Rowena's mind was labyrinthine and complex, and she forced that complexity onto the physical environment. Her goal was not convenience.
Clearly not.
Her goal was to physically challenge the students, to force neuroplasticity, keeping them constantly alert and mentally engaged just to navigate their way to a classroom.
She wanted their brains firing on all cylinders at all times. Then you have Godric Gryffindor. He was essentially the structural engineer.
He was a renowned duelist, a master of battle.
So he built the defenses, he constructed the towering spires, the thick battlements, and the magical stone warriors that can be animated to defend the school.
Yeah.
He is the one who gave Hogwarts its imposing fortress aesthetic.
Gryffindor's contribution is inextricably tied to his valorization of bravery and martial prowess.
It looks like a castle ready for war.
Exactly. The tall towers represent a psychological desire for bold visibility, a physical manifestation of courage thrusting into the sky. He built a stronghold because his primary lens for viewing the world was conflict and defense. He wanted the school to look unyielding.
Meanwhile, Helga Hufflepuff is essentially just trying to make sure everyone survives the winter.
She was the sustainer of the group.
She was a master of essential, life-saving charms. She designed the massive underground kitchens. She is the one who invented the incredibly complex teleportation magic that allows those huge, elaborate feasts to instantly appear on the tables in the Great Hall with a simple clap of the headmaster's hands.
Hufflepuff's architectural contributions are deeply rooted in the concept of communal care and fellowship.
She was taking care of him.
Yes. While Gryffindor is busy militarizing the roof, and Ravenclaw is building spatial puzzles to test their spatial reasoning, Hufflepuff is ensuring the fundamental physiological and emotional needs of the children are met.
Which is so important.
In a dark, freezing Scottish winter, during a time of intense persecution, warm food and a lit hearth are the ultimate symbols of safety.
And then we arrive at Salazar Slytherin.
Yes.
He was responsible for the Foundation. He built the vast, echoing network of underground dungeons, which, objectively, you do need basements in a giant castle for storage and potions.
Sure.
But he secretly betrayed the trust of the other three founders. While he was digging those dungeons, he went further down, deep beneath the bedrock, and built the Chamber of Secrets, hiding a monstrous, lethal basilisk inside it without anyone else knowing.
The psychological reflection in Slytherin's architecture is stark and disturbing.
It's terrifying.
His domain is entirely subterranean, dark, cold, and utterly disconnected from the light of Gryffindor's towers or the warmth of Hufflepuff's kitchens. It perfectly reflects his secretive, elitist, and ultimately treacherous nature.
He literally planted a bomb in the basement.
He built a literal weapon of mass destruction into the foundation of a school that was explicitly designed to protect children.
Think about the last time you were stuck in a frustrating group project. Now multiply that by 1,000. The founding of Hogwarts is the ultimate nightmare group project.
It really is.
One person is hyper-focused on gearing up for an imminent war. One person is making the stairs unnecessarily complicated just to prove a point about cognitive agility. One person is actually doing the grueling practical work of making sure everyone is fed.
And the fourth person?
The fourth person is secretly building a trapdoor to house a giant snake to murder the people they don't agree with. It is an absolute miracle this institution functioned for a single week.
It is a miracle, but it serves as a profound demonstration of how architecture reflects ideology. The castle is not just a building. It is a physical map of their competing worldviews.
That's a great way to put it.
The shifting corridors are the complex mind. The communal kitchens are the beating heart. The battlements are the raised sword. And the dungeons are the hidden, poisonous prejudices lurking beneath the surface of any institution.
So the castle is built. It is deeply, irrevocably imprinted with all of their neuroses, brilliance, and paranoia. For the first few years, they are personally handpicking their students based on these traits.
Right.
But they face a looming existential problem. They are mortal. What happens to the school, what happens to their carefully curated legacy when they die?
This is the central crisis of any foundational institution. How do you ensure your vision survives you?
They had to figure something out.
Initially, as the source text explicitly details, the founders acted as their own sorting system. Gryffindor sought out courage. Ravenclaw prized raw intelligence. Hufflepuff valued loyalty and fairness above all. Slytherin demanded cunning, ambition, and a highly specific bloodline.
But they realized they can't stand at the front doors forever, sizing up 11-year-olds. They needed a mechanism that would outlive them.
A way to ensure their highly specific values continue to shape the wizarding world for centuries to come.
And the solution they came up with is so wondrously bizarre.
It really is. They utilized an incredibly potent piece of magical technology, but they housed it in the most unassuming artifact possible.
Godric Gryffindor literally takes his ordinary, everyday wizard's hat off his head. The lore compares it to something like Gandalf's hat, just a regular, pointed, frayed, sweaty piece of felt.
An old hat.
And all four founders magically enchant it. They literally infuse it with their combined intelligence, granting the hat the ability to read the brains and minds of future students to sort them into the appropriate houses.
It is a staggering feat of magic. They essentially managed to download their consciousness, their preferences, and their rigid biases into an inanimate object.
But out of all the incredible magical artifacts they could have forged, they could have created a glowing orb of absolute truth, a mystical mirror that reflects your innermost soul, a golden scale of justice.
True.
Why use a sweaty old hat?
Consider the psychological impact on the student. What does it achieve to use something so mundane?
I think it's a brilliant subversion of expectations. The most consequential judgment in a young wizard's life, the singular decision that dictates who their friends will be, what their professional network will look like, and their entire trajectory comes from the most unimpressive-looking object in the room.
It's very humbling.
It forces these kids to realize immediately that powerful magic doesn't always look pretty or majestic. Sometimes it looks like garbage.
It completely strips away the pomp and circumstance. But we also have to examine the deeper systemic implications of what they actually did.
What do you mean?
By transferring their literal thoughts into the hat, they didn't just preserve their values, they institutionalized their subjective biases.
Wait, if they're putting their literal thoughts into the hat, they aren't just making it smart, they're making it biased. It's like coding an algorithm with 10th century prejudices.
Exactly the parallel we should draw. We see this today with artificial intelligence.
We do.
If you build a technological algorithm based on flawed human data, the algorithm will flawlessly replicate those human flaws. The sorting hat is, functionally, a magical algorithm.
That's a fascinating way to look at it.
But it was programmed by 4 highly opinionated, traumatized, flawed individuals from the Middle Ages. The hat is not an objective arbiter of universal truth. It is a mirror reflecting the specific neuroses of its creators.
That is slightly terrifying when you think about it. It's making lifelong decisions for children based on 1,000-year-old criteria.
It is.
But okay, the hat decides who goes where. Let's look at the symbols of where they are actually going. Let's solve the mysteries of the mascots, because the sources dig deep into the etymology and the hidden meaning behind the house names and the animals that represent them.
The symbolism here is highly deliberate. Let's begin with Gryffindor.
Okay.
The name itself contains the word griffin, which is appropriately the house mascot. The griffin is a formidable mythological creature, part lion and part eagle.
Right.
Historically, it represents fierce bravery, vigilance, and martial strength. It aligns perfectly with Godric's warrior ethos.
That one is pretty straightforward. But then we get to Ravenclaw. The name is literally Ravenclaw, yet the mascot, famously, is an eagle.
Yes.
And I need to emphasize that for everyone who has only seen the movies in the original lore, it is not a raven, it is an eagle. Why the massive contradiction between the name and the animal?
The answer lies in cross-cultural symbolism. In many ancient cultures, the eagle is a profound symbol of deep, soaring intelligence, farsightedness, and elevated perspective.
It sees everything.
Exactly. It flies higher than almost any other bird, representing a mind that is above the mundane. The name Ravenclaw might refer to the specific color of the eagle's talons, or it might simply be a nod to the fact that ravens are also heavily associated with intellect in various mythologies.
That makes sense.
But when it came to the visual crest, the founders chose the eagle to visually represent that soaring, unencumbered intellect.
Then we have Slytherin, the snake. This makes perfect literal sense because Salazar Slytherin was a parselmouth, meaning he possessed the rare magical ability to literally speak to snakes.
Right.
And snakes slither, hence the name Slytherin. Plus, across many mythologies, snakes represent cunning, stealth, swiftness, and sometimes rebirth.
The snake is grounded, it is hidden in the grass, and it strikes with absolute precision when necessary.
Unlike the eagle.
Right. It is the direct antithesis of the soaring eagle or the roaring, highly visible griffin. The snake fits perfectly with the subterranean architecture of the dungeons and the secretive, guarded nature of the house.
And finally, we have Hufflepuff. The mascot is the badger, a hardworking, tenacious, friendly animal that is incredibly fierce when provoked.
Don't mess with a badger.
Exactly. But the name itself, Hufflepuff, the source notes that it likely derives from the English idiom huff and puff. Like when you are doing intense, grueling physical labor and you are out of breath from the exertion, it highlights their absolute core trait of relentless hard work.
This is where we see the profound, unsung brilliance of Hufflepuff.
How so?
Well, human society naturally gravitates toward glorifying loud, ostentatious traits. We throw parades for the bold bravery of Gryffindor. We idolize and reward the raw, soaring intellect of Ravenclaw. We even begrudgingly respect the ruthless ambition of Slytherin.
We really do.
But Hufflepuff represents the quiet, unglamorous, grueling necessity of hard work and fairness.
It's the huffing and puffing of just keeping the world turning while everyone else is off seeking glory.
The Hufflepuffs are the ones in the kitchens. They're the ones doing the heavy lifting, maintaining the systems, and ensuring everyone is cared for.
They're the glue.
Exactly. Hard work and loyalty are the true bedrock of any functioning civilization. Without the Hufflepuffs, the castle literally starves, the defensive systems fail, and the brilliant ideas of the Ravenclaws or the brave charges of the Gryffindors mean absolutely nothing.
That's incredible. But beyond the etymology, the source material also offers a massive fan theory about these specific mascots that I hadn't considered before.
The Patronus theory.
Yeah. The question is, why did the founders choose ordinary, mostly non-magical animals as their mascots? I mean, they are living in a world teeming with dragons, unicorns, phoenixes, and hippogriffs. Why an eagle, a badger, a snake, and a griffin, which is mythical to us, but relatively standard fare compared to other beasts in their world?
The theory provided in the extended lore suggests that these 4 animals were not chosen at random from a medieval bestiary, nor were they merely symbolic marketing choices.
What were they?
The theory posits that these 4 animals were likely the founders' actual physical patronuses.
Which is, just to clarify for anyone rusty on their lore, a Patronus is the deeply personal magical guardian that a wizard can summon to protect themselves from absolute despair and dark creatures like Dementors. It takes the shape of the animal that most deeply represents the wizard's innermost soul.
Right. So if this theory is accurate, it adds an incredible layer of profound intimacy to the founding of the school.
They were sharing a piece of themselves.
They didn't just pick cool logos. They chose the very manifestations of their own souls to watch over the students.
It's like personal branding, but on a deeply spiritual level. Imagine a modern CEO making their own literal, vulnerable spirit animal the logo of a massive multinational corporation.
It would be weird today.
Super weird. But the founders were plastering their most intimate psychological projections onto the banners of the school. Every time a student looks at a badger or a snake on the wall, they were looking at a localized piece of the founder's soul.
It connects perfectly back to the mechanism of the Sorting Hat. The founders completely infused this institution with their own identities, to a degree that is almost overbearing.
They're everywhere.
Their minds are in the hat, their souls are on the banners, and their neuroses are carved into the architecture. Hogwarts is not just a building. It is a living, breathing monument to the psychology of 4 extraordinary, deeply flawed human beings from the 10th century.
Let's take a breath and recap the massive journey we've taken today.
It's been a lot.
We started by looking at a 25-year-old woman trapped on a freezing, delayed train in 1990, using absolute boredom to channel her real-world struggles into a fictional universe.
Right.
We watched that universe get rejected by 12 gatekeepers before a stubborn 8-year-old girl forced the adults to pay attention. Then, we dove deep into the lore itself. We traveled back to a 10th century Scottish fortress built to survive literal bloody witch hunts.
The survival elements are key.
We decoded the psychological warfare hidden in the layout of a crest, and we explored how the castle's architecture is basically a physical map of the brilliant and sometimes treacherous minds of its creators.
We have basically dismantled the facade of whimsical, easy magic to reveal a narrative fundamentally rooted in trauma, survival, human psychology, and the long, complicated shadow of institutional bias.
And that leads me to a final lingering thought. Something I want you, the listener, to really mull over the next time you engage with this world.
What's that?
Well, we talked about how the Sorting Hat was programmed by 4 highly flawed individuals, one of whom literally hid a giant murderous monster in the basement just to settle a political grudge.
Sure.
So is the Hat's judgment actually flawless? When an 11-year-old sits on that stool, are they truly being sorted into their ultimate cosmic destiny? Or are they just being squeezed into the 1,000-year-old subjective biases of 4 ghosts? Is the magic in the hat itself? Or is the hat just projecting the historical baggage of the founders onto completely innocent kids, creating the very heroes and villains it expects to see?
It really challenges the very concept of free will and destiny within this universe. Are you born a Slytherin, or does a prejudiced ancient algorithm tell you to become one?
That is exactly the question. So I challenge you to rethink everything you thought you knew about this world. Which house do you actually belong in?
Probably not the one from the online quiz.
Exactly. Don't base it on some simple 5-question online quiz about your favorite color. Base it on the raw historical survival traits we've discussed in this deep dive. Are you the quiet, grueling backbone of society, the soaring, unencumbered intellect, the fortified martial courage, or the cunning hidden survivor? Keep learning, keep questioning your assumptions, and keep diving deep.